This business podcast, the Two Business Guys Mastermind, uncovers for you secrets and share tips and tricks to entrepreneurship as they mastermind on how to have startup, operational, and overall business success so that you can go on to get better results. Enjoy. Books can make your businesses boom. Listen in as the Two Business Guys Mastermind on the books that can have a great impact on your business. Enjoy. All right, welcome back, everybody. The Two Business Guys are masterminding today. You're here with Randy Otterbridge, and we've got John F. Hendershot. He is, all fired up and ready to go. And today, what we thought we'd do is we're going to be talking about how this books, and we brought several books, how this book can make your business boom, right? We know every single thing, every single idea has already been done, but there might be a way you can take a piece of information, apply it to your particular business. Now, and remember now, we're not going to just be talking about business books. I got one on history, then I've got, a book where a guy put a whole bunch of stuff together. You might get inspired by something you hear, right? Something we drop, just a little nugget, a sentence, a paragraph that you go, that's the piece I've been looking for my business. So we wanted to go ahead and come up with a couple of things. And my books are all over the map. I read constantly. John reads constantly. And what we're going to do is just kick it off. John, if you want to kick it off, you can go for it, man. How
Absolutely.
This book can make your business boom.
Absolutely. And I wanted to start with a non-business book, but I believe as entrepreneurs, this is at the heart of it. And I'm starting off with Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants. And this book, I read it when it first came out. I think it was like 7 years ago. Yeah. And I remember my wife and I went on a 3-day mini vacation down in the boonies in Indiana at French Lick, and we went to caves and whatnot. And I remember sitting on this big porch with nothing around and just reading this book and thinking, he's talking about me. I mean, I felt like, wow, he's talking about these individuals that you would never think would be successul because there were characteristics, literacy characteristics or different things like that you would think would be preventing them from being successful. And sometimes it's that underdog strength, like in David and Goliath, where
I love that story.
And Malcolm goes into detail, and he talks about how big they think that Goliath was in comparison, but Goliath had his own weaknesses that we never look at.
Right.
But the quote that I want to talk about is, courage is not something that you already have that makes you brave. When the tough times start, courage is what you earn when you've been through the tough times and you discover they aren't so tough after all. And I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs, we get excited and we start and we hit a roadblock and we think, well, that roadblock's telling me that I should stop and this isn't for me. And that's not necessarily true.
That's the lesson. That's the lesson right there.
And I think, whether it's I'm going on a diet or whatever it is, I think we become so discouraged as individuals because we don't get it right away. We see others who do it flawlessly, but we don't know how many hours. And Malcolm has this theory of 10,000 hours and whatnot, but we don't know how much someone practiced to be as good as what they are. And I think there's so many things out there, so many missed opportunities because we give up before we even really begin, before we even
Yep.
give ourselves a
Yep.
chance to be successful.
Yep. And that is, as I take a look at that particular quote, you guys, if you're just jumping into this, you're listening to the Two Business Guys Mastermind. In this particular week, what we're talking about is how a book can make your business boom if you're able to extract out of it the nuggets of gold, right? And with John talking about Malcolm Gladwell's that story, David and Goliath, and why I liked it so much is when he said that David had skills too.
Mhm.
That when he slung that, and I'm kind of paraphrasing him, but when he slung that thing, it was like a shooter with a rifle of his day. So you in your business, you've got skills too. So when you see someone and it appears that they're succeeding, or it appears as this, you've entered into a market and oh my goodness, the bigs just came in and they're about to swallow your business up. Just remember, you've got some skills too that they don't, right? They've got blind spots. They've got maybe issues, cracks like Goliath had, right? He may have been suffering from inability to see well. So he couldn't see this little dude coming up with this rifle of a slingshot, right? And that's how David won. How is it that you can win? So when we talk about how a book can make your business boom, you got to be able to see that story and then say, okay, wait a minute. What's going on right now is that we're seeing a lot of the bigs.
Mhm.
This is time, depending on when you're listening to this. This is, we're in a pandemic, right? And we're seeing companies big just peel off. Now imagine your small company, you're nimble and quick, you've got some successes, you've done some things, you put in some hours, and now you are out there saying, you know what? I'm not going to go start a big restaurant. We love talking about restaurants. You've heard us before. I'm going to start a delivery only,
Mhm.
or my food truck's going to go all over town. And heck, I'm just going to borrow somebody else's food truck and I'm going to make money with their name and just me showing up. I mean, whatever it takes, and split the money, right? So you don't have to invest anything. I hear people talk about that all the time when I'm talking to the entrepreneurs. I'm going to start a food truck. I says, well, go borrow one first and see if that'll work. See if you can find
Mhm.
spots, find customers, right? And then split the money with the owner. And I mean, it's things like that, right? That if you are reading a book and you're saying that passage, and I don't mean you have to read books from beginning to end. I used to do that and it would just drive me nuts because I'd have 4 books not done. And then I think it was Naval Ravikant who talked about this. He says, just pick up a book and start reading it from wherever you are, because you might get something in that space. And I was a left to right reader, right? I like to read it all. And then I felt like I wasn't accomplishing anything if I didn't get it done. But forget that. Grab the nuggets that you want to grab. The book that I have, now, I'm going to I started off with Tony Robbins, Money Mastered the Game. And there was a quote in here that he was talking to billionaire Sir John Templeton, right? And that's right on page 61 if you got the hard copy. And he says that, and it was really key right here, right? He says that John Templeton studied history and then he noticed patterns, right? And then he says, this is a quote that John Templeton said to Tony Robbins. He said, Tony, you find bargains at the point of maximum pessimism. Now, let's take that sentence. You find bargains at the point of maximum pessimism. And now say to our businesses, right now, what is happening all around? People are peeling off their businesses. People are down. The pandemic has everybody's pockets all turned up. We're in a maximum pessimism time. What can you now say about your business, about your abilities, about the things that you know that you can say, I can take advantage of, not people. We're talking about take advantage of what's happening that you had no control over. That You may be able to say, wow, I'm a creative person. I come up with ideas all the time. This is the time for those as ideas. What can you come up with that could be of benefit to your marketplace and or another entrepreneur from what you know, from your 10,000 hours, as Malcolm Gladwell talked about, from you having done a lot of stuff, from you having lived life, right? Are you scrappy? Can you teach that? Are you resourceful? And I was telling my wife yesterday, I says, man, I says, you're a pretty resourceful person, right? And I says, I was listening to an entrepreneur, I think the founder of Y Combinator, and or I was reading some of his material, and he says how he could tell if an entrepreneur that came into the Y Combinator pitching or whatever was going to be successful. And I apologize, Paul Graham, if you hear this and you go, that's not exactly what I said. So, but it was, he says, I could tell if they're relentlessly resourceful, right? Relentlessly resourceful. So now let's take that piece, bring it into what we just read here from what John talked about and what I'm talking about here in Money Master the Game from Tony Robbins. Relentlessly resourceful. Now, in this case, the quote that pulled out was that you find bargains at the point of maximum pessimism. That's resourcefulness. Can you look around and notice something missing from the marketplace, a gap, and you say to yourself, hey, I think I have the ability because I'm a constant creator, right? And what you don't have from a skill set standpoint, can I go and bring it together using, Fiverr, Guru, Upwork, Envato, whatever? Can you now bring something together really quick, put it out there, and see if you can inspire some folks that might want to follow you with regard to that idea?
And we talked about this in the very, very first episode. We had brought in examples like Dyson,
Yes.
which was in, the vacuum. Everybody's heard of the Dyson vacuum. And then during the pandemic, they started making the ventilators.
Right.
And
Right.
we talked about Miracle Whip and how they got started during the Great Depression when eggs were expensive.
Exactly.
And so they had to come up with an alternative. So these are the times, those are two of the most difficult times in the past 100 years that we've dealt with in our country. And you have entrepreneurs that come up with solutions and they become vastly successful. And we see that right now. We see that with individuals
Mhm.
who make en masse and providing different things to hospitals and research, and there's over 100 different types of vaccines being developed right now
Right.
for the COVID-19. So all of this innovation that we might not see unless we go deeper, but there's some really, really great stuff that's going on, some genius that's being used um, in a way to benefit us as human beings.
Absolutely. And now if we think about this, we could probably go and start breaking down how Pfizer came up with this idea. They actually partnered with some other folks that were doing some bigger things from a computational standpoint. Don't quote me on that, but I mean, this is what I'm talking about is that they says, hey, listen, we do this very, very well. They do that very, very well. Let's combine our talents and let's apply our fast track ability, our power, influence, whatever it is, to now be the ones that came out with this particular product first. And now all of a suddenly everybody else is coming out with a vaccine that is probably going to be the same or just about using the same kind of ingredients, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you now have someone that got first to market. And then, of course, you get well, it's not really ready, it's not really available, and or, well, their vaccine has to be chilled at a certain degrees, and that's not room temperature. And then you have another company says ours is not room temperature, but refrigerator temperature. Another company comes and says, oh, we got one, but ours is you're able to do it this way. Right. And then you start seeing how some of although Pfizer's big, but I think some of the companies that they had connected with, they're scrappy little companies, right? That didn't have the same infrastructure, didn't have the same influence and all that kind of stuff. And then they connected together and boom, did a thing. And it could be the thing that heals the world, right? Think about your company. Same concept. Now, the next book, John, if unless you want to go ahead with the next one, the next book that you have.
The next book that I have, I'm going to stay on Gladwell for a second.
Okay.
Because I think that there's another point too that goes back to that entrepreneur state. And we know as entrepreneurs that people think we're nuts. People are like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Is that?
Well, we wrote about that, right?
Yeah,
in our book, that in volume 1 of the Business Guys Mastermind, we talked about how entrepreneurs are different. Mm-hmm. That's out in, you can go get it at Amazon. Just go ahead and go over there, put our names in, right? The audio book is being negotiated right now. Oh my gosh, I'm having trouble getting it through Audible's filters, right? Third time I had to send it back through. Anyway, so that'll be available to you too. But we talked about that. Go ahead. I'm sorry, John. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. So sometimes we allow others to influence us, talk us out of things, because we believe that, hey, they might be right. Maybe that is nuts. But Malcolm brings up he has a really good quote. It says, you can't concentrate on doing anything if you're thinking, what's going to happen if this doesn't go right? And, that hit me because
what's going to happen?
He's that's true. I mean, that's very right. If we go in it with a mindset and we're like, this is good chance I'm going to fail. Well, you're probably going to fail. You got to go into it saying, hey, you know what? Everything that I got, I'm going to put into this.
Yeah. There's information that comes from failure. I remember reading this a long time ago that says, there's no such thing as failure. It's simply information. Now, think about that. There's no such thing as failure. It's just information. Oh my gosh. If you take that approach, now you have a different way of looking at anything you do. Another one that really spoke out to me is, and I got a little note up as I look up on a 3x5 card. It says, when you're starting anything, just say, I'm experimenting with this.
Yeah,
right? This is in beta. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Beta.
There's a time in our lives where we can't ride a bike or we can't walk. And we don't say after we fall off the bike or after we take a few steps and we fall down, hey, you know what? I'm just not going to try this anymore. We're determined. We have this persistence that we keep going. And you know what? I'm going to get up on that bike as many times as it takes. I'm going to scrape my knees. But I'm going to succeed. And that's the way that we should be going into entrepreneurship.
It's interesting that, and this can segue into another book that we don't have in front of us, but I was looking at a lot of podcasts that Seth Godin, who just wrote his new book called The Practice. And The Practice is just about that, right? It's just about shipping your work. Right now, I remember reading Stephen Pressfield's stuff that he did with Seth Godin, the book that he did with Seth Godin, or Seth Godin published it through the Dominoes Project. And that one was called, I can't remember the name of it right now. But anyway, in it, it was about shipping your product, whether or not it is super duper good. It's about completing and then putting it out into the marketplace for the marketplace to tell you thumbs up, thumbs down. And then you being able to say, awesome. Now let's go back to what we spoke about earlier. There's no such thing as failure, because guess what? It's just information. They didn't like this. You didn't tap into what people were feeling at the time. You didn't market it well. All these information points, not failure. Right now, here's something that happened just recently that speaks to what we're talking about right now, and how you can listen to this and hear these as we're pinging off these particular points in the books and then in real life. So we watched the big old rocket from Elon Musk blow up, right? And now what he said was, hey, no worries. He even said he had kind of managed expectations earlier and says, we expect to lose some of these rockets. Now it went up in the air and did its thing. This is the rocket that I guess is supposed to go to Mars, right? And they were testing its ability to get up. Now, when it was coming down, it didn't stick the landing and exploded. But what you heard him say was, we expect to lose some of these. Now, if you are saying to yourself, in business, I expect that not all the things I put out there, present, ideas wise, divisions, whatever, are going to succeed. I'm just experimenting with this. Right. And then if you think about what Gladwell talks about, if you are saying to yourself, well, this has got to make it, then you might be setting yourself up for a kind of failure. A kind of failure that you can't recover from, right? So this is how you can take these pieces of books and be inspired by them. This is the key. Be inspired by that section and say to yourself, hey, maybe, I'm experimenting with this. There's no such thing as failure. It's just information. How you now recover and how you repurpose, how you look at that information is going to be, I think, the keys to your quote unquote success or quote unquote failure, or in other words, the information that you get. That, I believe, is what makes a difference. So good. That was a good one, man. I appreciate that from that book. And this is what I do. This is what you can do when you are looking at book and how these books can make your business boom. And you see that it's not just from business books, because this is what I found. And I remember when I was reading just a awful amount of business books. Eventually, there's this one thing that happens. They all start sounding the same. Right. And I mean, I was probably reading 60 books a year. But this was a point when I was in college. I was reading and I was in that mode and I wanted to learn fast. I wanted to get my 10,000 hours in, if you will, of something. And then I got discouraged because they started just kind of sounding the same. Right. So that's when I started reading history books. I started reading books outside of a specific domain. Right. And then what started happening was I started noticing that I could take pieces of what they were saying, be inspired by that, and go, oh, that's actually a metaphor for this. Right. And one of the books I'm going to be reading from next is by Walter Isaacson. And this guy just, he just does the job when he's talking about historical figures, man. Whether Steve Jobs, whether Da Vinci, he does an excellent job. And this is Ben Franklin. Right. So I'm thinking, oh my God, I got a book and it's over, 500 pages. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to read this thing. But then I was able to just pick it up, go to this is chapter 6. If you're reading a soft cover, page 128, The Scientist and Inventor. Now, this is one thing that I want to share with you guys and then be able to show you how you can take this passage and then create from it. Okay. He was talking about during his voyage home from England at age 20, he studied dolphins and calculated his location by analyzing a lunar eclipse. Okay, who does that at 20? But anyway, right? And then get this. He used his newspaper, almanac, the junta, and the Philosophical Society to discuss natural phenomena. So now you may read that passage and go, what does that mean? Right? What does that mean? So this is what I'm going to show you. Is you see what he was doing? He was leveraging his interest through some of his business entities. And this is what I want to show you guys, is that because you have a business or thinking about starting a business, and if you haven't started, why you want to start the business is because now you can leverage your interests into, funnel them into, get readership from. You see what's happening is that now you can say, hey, wait a minute. If I already have a business and I'm seeing what I just read there in Walter Isaacson's Ben Franklin's bio, if I have an interest that I can now funnel through my business, is it possible that I can go and get more customers who also have those interests? And because they see you writing this stuff, no matter what your business is, they go, I like that person. They're like me. They have similar interests. Let me now look into the business that they may be offering them, right? Can you do this through a blog? Absolutely. Can you do this through a podcast? Absolutely. Right. And then now you're saying, wait a minute, I'm now becoming a fully realized, right? The self-actualization chart, if anybody ever remember that stuff, a fully realized person, because now I have an opportunity and ability to push my interests, the things I like, the things that are frustrating me, the things that are causing whatever, through interest, through an interest that I can create, like that, for cheap or no money. Reading that passage right there, that's the kind of thing that gets your mind churning and thinking about what more can I do. And this is what I suggest when I'm talking to entrepreneurs. I say to them that seem to be stuck, right? The entrepreneurs that come to me and they say, man, I'm kind of stuck. I don't quite know what to do next with my business. And I say, well, why don't you ask your business, what else can you be? And if it starts talking back to you, well, you might want to see somebody. But it does talk back to you, because what you've done is that you says, how much more can this business be? Right. And then that brings something to your mind because you're asking it in a specific way. How much more can this business be? Then the business says, well, I could possibly go into this area. And you may, well, I have no skill set in the area. So, well, you can kind of gather skill set now because you got a lot of people out there freelancing. So you just have to have that desire, and you have to be that relentlessly resourceful person that is constantly picking apart what you're currently doing and asking questions of it. That's how you stay ahead of the game. That's how you don't get blockbustered and, let Netflix come in and steal your stuff. That's how you stay ahead, by doing stuff like that. So now think about that. A book, a passage, a sentence, an inspiration that you go, oh, wait a minute, I can do something with this. And that's how a book can make your business boom, because you never know when you read that passage and you bring it into your business and you do your little thing, what can happen from it. That's the point here. So John, you got still with Malcolm Gladwell? We love this stuff, right? We are pinging off of this stuff. We do the heavy lifting for you right now. And we want you to listen in and just be able to grab some stuff, some nuggets.
My next quote is from Adam Grant, and it's from the book Give and Take, A Revolutionary Approach to Success. And he says, success doesn't measure a human being, effort does. And so...
say that again, John. I'm sorry, I was writing.
Success doesn't measure a human being, effort does.
Ooh.
So we could see somebody that we say, oh, that, they're, worldly successful. Well, they could be successful from a whole bunch of standpoints. They could have been given an opportunity because of a network or whatnot, but it doesn't mean that they're actually putting any effort behind it. And that's the essence, that's the character of an individual is, what type of effort am I putting into these things? And I believe that's far more important than the world saying, oh, that person is successful and they're doing and they inherited success. They're an heir to whatever they're doing.
Wow, that is so powerful, John, because to me, I started thinking about another book that I got here called, and this is not even on the list today, but this one's called The Four Disciplines of Execution, right? And it's by Chris McChesney, Sean Covey,
Chesney. Yep.
Chesney, yep, and what did I say? Chesney? It's only one E. And Jim Huling. So Hulling, how you say that? So, and when I read that, I started thinking about the lead and lag measures, right? And what they basically said was, and this goes into what you're talking about, one will get the other, right? And then that makes me think about Scott Adams, right? Scott Adams talked about, now this, who are you quoting again? Was it Scott?
Adam Grant.
Oh, Adam Grant.
He's a professor at Wharton.
So think about this. Scott Adams says, listen, stop with the goals and start with the processes. Mm-hmm. That speaks to the same thing. Success doesn't say, what is it? Success doesn't determine.
Doesn't measure a human being, effort does.
Doesn't measure a human being, effort does. And then when you start thinking about that, if you do one, the other will come. In other words, if every single day you're showing up doing the work, the rest will come. Right? And when Scott Adams talked about, hey, forget goals, because if you do processes, systems every single day, you look at your system, he says, okay, I do this every single day, then your goal will get met.
I started thinking about this. Last week, I think three days during the week, I was painting. After I finished the day in the evening, I was painting some things at the house, and that lets your mind wander. I'm listening to podcasts at the same time, and I started thinking, what is it better to create success on your own, or is it better to inherit success? And I thought, yeah, it'd be nice to be able to have the resources, all through your life and the network and the connections. Mm-hmm. But isn't it so much more gratifying if you're creating that success on your own?
Yeah. Why they say that you ever heard of that? And I'm going to mess this up, guys. I apologize in advance. From long sleeve to short sleeve or something in 3 generations. Mm-hmm. And when I heard that, I was like, what are they talking about? Shirts? No, they really are talking about that, short sleeves. Well, basically suggests that you've lost something. You lost some material. And they talked about this from the standpoint of wealth in 3 generations. And you've heard this before, or you may have heard this before, that it's usually that 3rd generation that loses all the wealth, because the first generation put in the effort. Now, this is going back to what John was talking about from the book. That was where the success came from. 2nd generation tries to hold on because they probably were at the knee of the 1st generation. And then that 3rd generation, well, they didn't put in the effort because they didn't have to. Now, we can take this personal. Think about this. One quote starts you thinking about other things that you can recall, remember what Granny said, what Pop said, what your professor said, what somebody in school said. That's what reading one piece of material can do. Mm-hmm. Is it brings in all those other thoughts, and then you go, yeah, what does that mean? Well, it means that if you put in the effort, the rest will come. Right? Can you define a person by their success? No, because we don't know where we got it. We don't know what was dropped into their lap, right? Oh, they're Kardashians, right? And then you start seeing who was working. Right now, their kids might be in trouble because they were born into it. But then you see the work that's being put in, right? And you see the stuff that people had to overcome. Right? I mean, come on, think about how she started off her, getting popular. She had to overcome that to now say, hey, I got, hundreds of millions of dollars. And it all started off with, a Ray J incident, right? If you will, right? Now, that becomes, when you look at effort, what's the effort being put in? Behind the scenes, right? Chris, the mama, going out there saying, hey, I'll manage you. They're keeping the money in the family. right? And you've heard horror stories, and then you heard success stories of the people working in the family. So now you don't give it to somebody else when you got a perfectly, good person in the house that can, benefit from your outcome, but their efforts. You see what's happening here? That is the power of being able to pick up a piece of a book, grab a quote out of it. Now, that happens to be in my skill set. I'm able to take these pieces of information and go, oh, that's like this. So when I'm working with an entrepreneur, that's what I do. That says, okay, let's consider this. Let's do it this way. When I'm running my, mastermind classes and I'm doing all of this stuff, right? It's because now I'm able to say, all right, let's take that piece of information. Let's add this to it. Now you have this. You will, it's like you create ingredients because they're everywhere. The ingredients are everywhere. You never run out of food, if you will, because you always can bring together, be relentlessly resourceful, and then bake what you want, cook what you want, have what you want, and it always becomes that opportunity for you. So this next one that I want to read from John is The Tools of Titans. The Tactics, Routines, and Habits of Billionaires, Icons, and World-Class Performers by Tim Ferriss. Now, this is a huge book. This actually should have been, it's 650, 650 plus pages, and it could have been, 3 books, and he knows it, right? I listened to some of his podcasts, and I hadn't listened to a podcast of his in a long time, but I recall, where did I get a lot of my book ideas and stuff like that? A lot of them from listening to his podcast, because he's always talking about some kind of book that, and then I go check it out, then I buy it, and it's like, oh my God, this is a really good book.
That's 6 John Gordon books.
You see what I mean? So but he put it all in there, and then he talks about the how it all started. But get this, once you get the book, and I look at this as an evergreen kind of book. In other words, the information doesn't get old. It's something that is forever green, right? It always constantly, when you look at something, you can always pull something from a collection of the people he talked to in here. That was the key. He talked to a collection of people from his podcast, et cetera, and then they gave, their information, and he calls them tools. Well, this one is from Peter Thiel. Now, however you feel about Peter Thiel, I've read some of his stuff, and it's an interesting dude, right? And one of the things that really that I was able to pull out of this, he said this. He says, if you're planning to do something with your life, if you're planning to do something with your life, if you have a 10-year plan of how to get there, and here it comes, guys, you should ask, why can't you do this in 6 months? Now, how many, think about this, everybody, how many 10-year plans are garbage now? I bet Blockbuster had a 10-year plan. We like to pick on Blockbuster. Kodak had a 10-year plan. Now Kodak's making a comeback. Kodak stock went to like way up. Why? Because they're figuring out a way to use that brilliance and all of those patents in a whole different area. Now they're in the pharmaceutical area. Why? Because they were a chemical company. So they started scratching their head, and I'm just assuming this happened, right? They started scratching their heads and saying, wait a minute, what do we have that we've done for years that's different than what we've done before? And he says, we're a chemical company. Well, what do chemists do? They come up with stuff. Oh, really? Then they put it together and says, well, can we do this in the pharmaceutical area? And somebody says, I see no reason why not. Can't you do that with your business? That's why I talked about it earlier, that you are asking particular questions of your business. Guys, and somebody's just jumping in the middle of this. John and I, for the Two Business Guys Mastermind today, are talking about how a book can make your business boom. And then what we're doing is taking sections of books and relaying to you guys how it could affect your business if you think about it in a different way, right? So if we think about what I'm talking about now, from the Tool of Titans, And that quote, so if you're planning to do something with your life, and if you have a 10-year plan, ask yourself, why can't I do this in 6 months?
So this brings me what I'm thinking about now when you say that is IBM was a massive organization in the early 1950s.
Mhm.
They had these tabulating time card machines and whatnot, uh, and they
The
weren't too
first computers,
yet. The second computers,
second
the
computers. Okay.
so there were a couple gentlemen from the University of Pennsylvania who invented the first computer, and they said that this could predict the 1952 election, Eisenhower
Mm,
and Adlai Stevens,
mhm.
and it did. The news tried to manipulate the results because the news didn't think that the computer was right, and they had to go back and say, "Hey, we manipulated the computer was actually right all along,"
Mm.
um, or as they called it, the brain. Uh, before the computer.
Mhm.
But anyway, um, IBM, their aging CEO, who I think he was in his 80s by then, he wasn't even focused on the computer, no R&D or anything. His son comes in and says, "Hey, we're getting beat to the punch. We need to do something." Son takes over the company, and instead of years, because it was taking years to develop these types of things, he's like, "We're doing this in months.
Mm.
And this is where all of our energy is going to go. And this is what we're going to do." And they did it.
Why can't you do so? So to that point, and now let's take these nuggets, these pieces of information, right? Because I always say to people, I says, well, there's gold all around you, pearls, diamonds, and then somebody looks down and says, yeah, I have nothing to carry them with. Right? So let's not only show you where the nuggets where they are, but then let's also remind you to bring something to carry the nuggets away, right? And in this particular case, this is your mind being able to take this information, bring it in, and then now be able to say, how can I take this information, repurpose it in a way, reclassify it? How can I make it big? How can I make it small? This is some stuff that I've been able to train myself, and as I train myself, you don't have to be a genius for this stuff. You just have to start thinking a little differently. You now have your business, and why you can take these pieces of information and make your business go boom is because now you're going to be going, oh wow, this is going to filter in this way. So as I think about that piece of the story, and I say, all right, IBM still around, right? IBM saw threats. IBM, two people in a room created the first computer, and they were getting, disrupted. But the two didn't have what IBM did. The two were like, David, David to Goliath, right? And Goliath was able to say, yeah, but we've got resources. So let's change our mind and become a big David, right? Goes full circle back to what we talked about. You see how we're making that connection? Full circle back to what Gladwell talked about in his book. Then they said, okay, can we do this? Absolutely. And then they went on a tremendous run, successful run of creating different things. Even now, they're creating things in the artificial intelligence arena that's going to change everything, right? It's already changing everything. And I think about that and I say, how can we do this on a personal level?
They were being threatened with becoming obsolete. Their tabulation machines were going to be made obsolete by the computer if they didn't act and do something. So
That's
they had to do it out of necessity.
So once again, out of necessity, relentlessly resourceful. This is the question that we're asking of you today is, can you say, can you say to yourself, I may not be terribly ideal oriented, et cetera, but where are those ideas? They're in the books, right? And it doesn't matter how you get your information. They're in the books that are now turned into YouTube channels. They're in the books that are now turned into podcasts. They're in the book. That becomes the point. In other words, the information is out there, but do you have something to carry it home with? Right? This is the work that John and I do. We don't just do the podcast, we also consult with you about how to do this stuff. So you want us to do that, get in touch with us. You can find us. We're going to leave some information where you can find us. I typically do every time that we do this podcast is leave an opportunity for us to be contacted. So you can call us and says, okay, two business guys, mastermind on my business, right? I need help. And then that's what we do. We bring in all these pieces of information. We've done the heavy lifting, all the reading, all the suffering, and then now we can help your situation. That's your call to action right there, to call us if you so choose to. If not, listen in, do it yourself. That's fine. And we'll be there as guides for you, however you want that to work. But let's think about this for a second. They were about to become obsolete, like John said. And isn't that like us? We say to ourselves, well, I've only done one thing for all my life. I worked a factory, or I worked over here. And now this pandemic is making you get on Zoom, whether it's your kids, your grandkids. You now got to figure a couple of things out. And then when you do it a couple of times and you go, yeah, it's not too bad. And then you do it 10,000 hours more. Now you're a pro, right? That's what's possible. That's the reinvention of you in this particular case. And if you have a business, that is the reinvention of your business. All because you read a little something somewhere. You heard a little something that came from some writing somewhere, whether it's a podcast, a YouTube channel, whatever it is. I'll give you an example. I was listening to a book, very popular book, and I had never read it. I can't believe I've read all this guy's other stuff, but I just can't believe I hadn't read this. It was called Outwitting the Devil by, oh my gosh, I can't think of the name now. Oh, shoot. You know what I'm talking about? The Think and Grow Rich guy, Napoleon Hill. So I says, yeah, I don't want to read another book. Do I have time for that? So I pulled it up on YouTube, and somebody blessed us with a reading of the book, and it was fantastic. And when you hear the name, you think, what does this have to do with business? Well, he talks about in Outwitting the Devil as if he basically personified the devil, and the devil's saying, hey, I got skills, I got tools, I take people out of their situations, I take their dreams from them, and this is how. And then you have this person saying, tell us more. How do you do this? Well, how do you do it through their parents? How do you do it? And the devil's like, well, I don't want to really tell you this because I want to stay in business, but this is how I do it, right? So now that was a podcast, a YouTube piece, a channel that came from some writing, right? That you could be in your office doing something else, listening to that, and boom, something drops into your consciousness, and you say, I can use that for my book. I can use that for my business. From that book, right? That's how a book can make your business boom. John, you got another one? Because I got one last book.
Just one more. Very few people or companies can clearly articulate why they do what they do. By why, I mean purpose, cause, or belief. Why does your company exist? Why do you get out of bed every morning? And why should anyone care? This is a quote from Simon Sinek from Start with Why. And how great leaders inspire everyone to take action. And I think about the Nike story, and most of the millennials
actually got his book, Phil Knight's book. It's called The Shoe Dog.
So you think Phil? They weren't anything until the 1980s. They started this company in the 70s. This industry was ruled by the Dassler brothers for 50 years.
Adidas?
Yeah, Adidas and Adidas. Puma. Yep.
That's right. Because two brothers that had two different shoes or broke up, and boom, yeah.
So Adi Dassler and then his brother, I can't think, Adolf, I think, Dassler. But anyway, they were the first one. Adi was to bring athletes into the fold. In the 1932 Olympics, Jesse Owens wore Adi's shoes. the Dassler brothers shoes. This was before Adidas and Puma. They worked together. So it was just under their Dassler name. But this made
But they had two companies under the one name.
No. They started together as the Dassler brothers. And when the World War II hit, there was some conflict between the brothers. So Audi started Adidas, and his brother started the Puma. And so you figure they ruled the market, mostly Adidas, for 50 years. Every sport.
So they were Goliath.
They were Goliath. Even Michael Jordan wanted to sign with them. People don't realize that. Even Michael Jordan wanted to sign with them. He didn't want to sign with Nike. Nobody knew what Nike was, really. And he goes out to Oregon, and he's sitting there, and they bring out a pair of what we now know as Air Jordans in the red and the black in his colors and stuff like that. And that was the selling point. So the other shoe companies that were courting him, they weren't going to make that his shoe. They weren't going to give him any input into it. Nike said, hey,
input and ownership.
Yep. Nike said, hey, we'll do. He's like, I don't know, the heel is too low or something. And they're like, okay, we'll change it. And we will make this for you. And Nike, and we know Nike by this slogan, just do it. And when we put on a pair of Nike shoes, I remember as a kid putting on a pair of Nike shoes. I never had a pair of Air Jordans because I couldn't afford them, but I remember putting on Nike shoes saying, these things make me better at basketball, football.
I do too. Yeah. They're lighter. I mean, in fact, right now, I'm wearing some Nikes. I'm not going to put my feet up here. I got my Ineffable socks on, and I got my Nikes, right? And the sports brand, right? The sports line of the Ineffable socks, and which is John's company, a little plug right there for him. But my point is, think about this. So from that piece of writing, you get, oh, wait a minute. They were like this. You see, it's coming full circle. It's like this book. It's like whatever, some other stuff we talked about, how you can be nimble and quick and just decide. And we talked a little bit about this in some of our other podcasts, is partnering better than trying to go it alone. 100% of nothing, or 50%, 10%, 3%, whatever it is of something. Right. And it's what John's philosophy is anyway, right? When he approaches somebody and says, look, I'd like to do this thing with you, you can have 75% of this effort. Right. So who does that? I was telling a entrepreneur the other day, and I says, listen, when you start this, I says, give 50% away to your affiliates. And I mean, they were like, what? I says 50%. And they were like, I can't believe, where'd you come up with those numbers? I said, I come up with that number in a simple way. Using psychology and understanding that nobody likes to feel that they got, or that you're using them, or that you, whatever it is, right? And I says, but with a 50-50 split, you are saying to them equals. I says, now I even suggest going more, saying give 60% away. If you now know what it cost you to come to the table to acquire a customer, it's just a little math that you say, wait a minute, if I don't have to acquire the customer, but I know on the back end that these customers stay with us 6 months, a year, whatever it is, and they typically buy this much, you can do the math. And you say to yourself, to get it one time, if I give the person, and I know some people that give 100% for the first time because they know on the back end, it's all good. So as a company or as an affiliate, if you will, right? You say to yourself, wait a minute, they're giving 100% of the first time sale away. I'm working with that company. And then you can grow extraordinarily fast. Right. So we just wanted to throw that little nugget in there, that little piece in there. But Think about what John had just mentioned from that particular book and how Simon Sinek is saying, and I think that's how he says his name, Sinek, anyway. And I've seen some of this stuff on YouTube. Awesome, awesome information. And he says, hey, listen, if your why is strong enough, it gets you up out of the bed. If it's strong enough, right? If you say, well, my why is, and this is something I have been talking and thinking about all this weekend, John. And it dawned on me. I read a piece of material. Now, this is relative to what we're talking about, guys. So stay with us. I was getting discouraged about something, right? Because I started a new thing, and I'm not seeing the results that I want to see, and I was getting a little, oh man, putting this time in, and it's not delivering what I wanted to deliver. Just what you talked about, how we get discouraged, and then we just peel off. But then I read something by Paul Graham, and this is the guy that started Y Combinator. Paul Graham, yes. He said a little piece in there. He said, and it was one of his essays, and it was the difference between money and wealth, or something like that. And I thought, okay, and he went into the difference, and it was in that piece of writing that reminded me of my big why, bringing it back to Simon Sinek. My big why of why I started my own company and left the 9-to-5. And I says, building wealth. And this is what Paul was talking about. Money is just one thing, right? You go to the job, you get a certain amount of money, right? And then that made me start thinking about other readings that I've come across that says your income is capped by whatever that company decides they're going to pay you. But when you create for yourself, you uncap your earnings. You uncap your income. You can pour all of your talents into a thing, and it can create wealth for you, right? And that's why I started Our Bridge Business Institute. It's the business startup. It was the idea that I could put ideas into the company, the institute. I can riff on it. I can learn. I can put it into the information, and I can now share with others. Here's what I did. Here's a mistake that I made. Don't make this mistake. Here's some material that you can get from it. Here's some helps and all that kind of stuff, right? So it gave me a home that I can now build rooms on too. And it was just from that piece of writing from Paul Graham that reminded me, I am creating wealth, not just going to the job and getting a $50,000 or whatever $1,000 check that can now last. Think about this. You build wealth. You build this company. You build this whatever. You write that book. That lasts. You develop that YouTube channel. That's wealth, because that'll go on. And if you got your monetizations right, then that can make you money forever. Think about Stephen King, for example. He gets up and writes every single day, even Sundays, even holidays, even whatever. And now his body of work, think about this, guys. His body of work has made his family rich. Him rich and his family rich. And guess what? After he dies, you will still have Stephen King books that have been made into movies, that will be made into this, that, and the others. That's building wealth in your business. Now, let's think about how a book, simple book, can build you wealth. And this last thing I wanted to share with you, and then John, if you want to close it up. So here's one from, now this book I bought, man, I don't know. I was in Saugatuck with my wife, and it was at a little spot over there called Book for the Season, right? It's right when you're coming in Saugatuck off of Lucy Street. You kind of roll by it before you get into the bigger area where the food and stuff is. Book for the Season, right? It's their book. And it's a nice little bookstore, huge percentages off. Anyway, so it's called The Mirror Test. And it says, and it's by Jeffrey W. Hazlitt, right? With Jim Eber or Eber. I am not sure how to say it, but here it is. The Mirror Test, right? Now, and it says, is your business really breathing? And this is a tough one, man. I mean, when you look at this, it's the mirror test. Is your company or is your business really breathing? He says, in business, the basic, this is on page 7, chapter 1. He says, in business, the basic mirror test is equally simple. And he had talked about how you know you're alive if you're breathing. And he says, if you're making money and growing, you're breathing. You're alive. If you're not making money and growing, you're dead. Think about that. He says, if you're in life, if you're breathing, you're alive. All right. And then he digs into it a little bit, how you're breathing, is it a good breath? And he also went into, he says, look, all companies that look great does not mean they're healthy. Now, we touched on this a little bit earlier. You can look great. Goliath was tall. He was, big, and it was like, oh my God, he's great. But he had some kind of illness. He couldn't see very well. He couldn't move well, and he got whooped up on. Right. So if you're sitting over there thinking, well, my company, I'm small, I'm just starting up. So what? You could be the disruptor in that area. Right. If you're nimble and quick, if you're relentlessly resourceful, if you're picking up pieces of material from just about everywhere, books, pods, YouTube channels, if you know how to or remind yourself or remember to bring something to take the gold and nuggets that you find home. Right now, for me, I keep my nuggets on paper, on the computer, right? On notes on my phone, on Evernote, on all these areas, on 5x7 cards, that now what you have the chance to do, everybody, is to pick it up and go, how does what I'm getting ready to read here inspire me? How could it inspire others? Can I do an email? Can I send an email to my list? Can I send a post out? Can I put something on the Instagram? Can I reconfigure? You see what's happening here is that from a book, you get the notes, you put them down, right? And I love to, and if you're using a tablet, if you're using Amazon or Reader or whatever, right? You can go and click on areas, highlight them, and then keep them, email them to yourself, all kinds of cool stuff. Keep them, but then you've got to remember to bring them home, right? To bring them home, to share with others what and how you've been inspired by what you just did, right? That's where Ben Franklin had these companies. He says, hey, he was 20 years old. He was going out checking all these things. And then he had these lanes that he had built that he could now pour himself, his ideas, his thinking into. And as a result of that, we're reading about him now. And this dude was 1700s, right? Think about you now. Your podcast, your blog, your books don't have to be great books. Sometimes they're just the books that give somebody an idea. All the rest could have been error filled, and that one page could be the thing that turns somebody around or turns somebody's business around and gives you an avenue to pour yourself into. Right? Guys, this is we're about at the end. If you literally just jumped in, then John and I were talking about how a book can make your business boom. And we just went over, 4 or 5 books, pulled out a passage, and then illustrated how it can make your business boom. If you see the gold, the nuggets, the pearls, diamonds, the platinum, whatever you want to say, bring something to pick it up, and then look at your business and go, okay, this is how I can use it. Or look at your life. This is about life too. Hopefully when you see and listen to this podcast, that you're saying, hey, wait a minute, I don't have a business, but I got a life. Well, that's the business of you. And you can take these lessons and what you're hearing and apply it to your life. And says, wait a minute, yeah, I could. I'm the business. Absolutely. That's what we hope that you would pick up from stuff like this. No business, but you got that life. Those 2 legs. If you don't have 2 legs, that 1 leg. If you don't have any legs, your arms. Whatever it is. You now have the mind. If you're breathing, you're alive. You now can go and create something that can help somebody. All right, John, go ahead and close it up for us, man. I think we have been able to express how people can take a book,
and
affect their business, whether that business is themselves.
inspiration is huge in entrepreneurship, and we're gonna have days. And please don't take the mirror test when you're just starting your business, because you're not going to be making money the way that you would like to be making money. It's a good indicator once your business is up and running, but we need to be inspired. We need to inspire others, and I think that we have to pour as much nutrients into ourselves as we can, if we want to become the best entrepreneur, the best leader, that we can. We have a choice. We don't have to read books or look at quotes or listen to podcasts or anything like that. But we we want, Randy and I, we believe that in order for us to be our best self, in order to be the best entrepreneur that we could be, that we have to continuously be pouring these nutrients into ourselves and into our company.
Yeah, it's Warren Buffett said it. When I read that he reads for 6 hours a day, I thought, oh my God. But he says, but the reading is like the nourishment, and I'm probably misquoting him here, but he said it's like you get ideas. And then I started asking my own self, I said, when was there a time when I was most inspired, most motivated? And it usually involved a book. When I was reading a book, because I got tubs and tubs of different ideas, and they typically came. They didn't just come out of the sky. It's because I was putting some nuggets in there. I was putting some fertilizer. I was dropping in seeds, right? And then other stuff fertilizes them. Something you see gets you fired up sometimes, right? And it makes you start stuff. But it usually started with reading. If I sat here today and after our podcast, instead of editing it and putting it on YouTube and Anchor, if I sat here and read a book, I would come up with stacks of ideas that come to me because of the stuff that's pouring in. That's what we want to get you to this point. Even in an era of limited attention, and we've talked about the dopamine detox, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is a huge thing that you can do for yourself. We don't want to go into that. That's a whole nother podcast, but we talk about basically getting away from all things stimulating so that your mind has a chance to let all of that good stuff that you've been doing in, get a bit of a chance to think. I try to take moments and pieces of days. Sometimes I take whole days, and it's hard, trust, and just don't do anything. But the stuff that is defined in under the dopamine detox, if you want to look that up on YouTube, dopamine detox, right? And I called it what did I call it? I called it forced focus, because you're not really focusing on anything, but yet you're focused on not doing anything. You can write, you can walk, right? But that's about it. And my goodness gracious, first it's hard, and then it's like beautiful. Stuff starts coming in, and you just kind of keep a little notepad and just drop it down. Don't use your phone. You don't, no TV, no nothing. And when I did my first one, I sat in my living room on the couch, right? I slept, right? I got up, I walked, and I kept a little notepad, and some very interesting things happened. But when you're reading a book, same concept, right? You're getting pieces of information coming in, and it just gels, right? Now imagine people like Warren Buffett, who's the richest, one of the richest people in the world, is telling you, when you read, this happens. So read often. And what we're saying to you, a book can make your business boom. Not go boom like in, bad, but boom as in good. We hope that's helped you today, everybody. We hope that you're able to take these nuggets. I'm serious. Take them home with you. Apply them to your business. Apply them to your life and see what happens next. So for, both of us, the Two Business Guys Mastermind today, and I just want to say Take care, everybody, and use some of these things. John, you want to say a couple things before we go?
I am good. I think this was a great session, and I hope listeners have taken a few nuggets away from it. And
Awesome.
even if they're not going to do a reading list, maybe they get Cliff Notes or audiobooks. If you don't want to pick up a 600-page book, those are options as well. Don't let barriers prevent you from growing yourself.
There you
So
go.
there's so many different options nowadays.
Awesome. And we will see you next time on the Two Business Guys Mastermind podcast. Take care.